Those three were a quorum at most meetings in the last 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is an attorney from Winchester, ex-member of the Winchester Planning Board, Steve Anderson.
Mr. Sullivan. I gotta call him John. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Steve Anderson, and I wish I had gone before the previous chapter. But I would like to begin by telling you how pleased I was to have been invited to come here and speak this evening. And if you think about it for a minute, you will understand why. It's because I, and most of the people in this room, not everyone, but most, have never been a Citizen of the Year and have slim to no chance of being. So, those chances apply to all of us. But here we are, all gathered together. We might be viewed as stragglers or laggards in the race for fame and fortune. And here we are to make fun of, mock, and if possible embarrass the winners. Well, how good is that? We rarely get that chance, do we? And as for me, I have a podium and a microphone and a whole room of people to do this with. What could be better? Well, what could be better would be to have some better material to work with. Because if you're going to make fun of somebody or embarrass them, you need something to make fun of. And after really thinking about it hard and for a long time, I couldn't come up with anything really good. Now, several years ago, I was asked to speak at this event, and that was on the occasion of Charles Sucker's being named Citizen of the Year. And I have to say that was a lot easier. I'm sorry Charles isn't here tonight. He'd probably want to stand up and wave, but coming back to the comparative material, I would observe, for example, that Tom has an unusual name, but it is a name that most of us know how to pronounce. And you don't have to injure any body parts in trying to pronounce it correctly, which would be the case with Charles. Tom rarely stands up in public meetings and turns them totally on their ear and sends them off in a completely different direction, even if it's a good one. And I have never heard Tom swear. So the bottom line is, what was I going to do? What could I come up with? And all I could think of was Tom's good qualities. I know, we've heard a lot about it. Boring, boring, boring. But bear with me, we'll try to get through it quickly. So good quality number one. We've already heard about this. Tom is good looking. I decided to do my own little investigation, and I can tell you that 9 out of 10 women that I spoke to said that Tom was very attractive. I think number 10 was actually a guy in drag. I'm not sure. Good quality number two, Tom is fun. So who better to ask than the person's spouse? So I had a long, confidential conversation with Nancy. And Nancy has confirmed that life with Tom is just a lot of fun. She said she's constantly entertained when Tom is around. Of course, Tom does travel a lot, and that probably accounts for why it's as much fun as it is. Good quality number 3. Tom is smart. Now for this, I didn't have to take any polls or conduct any interviews. I know this at first hand, and here's my evidence. Many, many years ago, when Tom and I were kid lawyers, Tom was more of a kid than I was, but no less of a lawyer. Tom became the general counsel of something called the Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston, generally referred to for obvious reasons as EDIC. EDIC was a legal entity, it had its own board of directors, but it was under the control of City Hall, and that meant at that time that our then mayor, Kevin White, who for some of us will always be the mayor, that's a subject for another night. Kevin White determined what eventually happened at EDIC, and what might or didn't happen was pretty much up to the mayor. Now, as the name implies, EDIC of Boston was the agency charged with the economic and industrial development of the city of Boston. And at the time that Tom became the general counsel, EDIC was undertaking several major projects, including turning the South Boston Naval Annex into the Marine Industrial Park and converting the old Boston Army Base into a viable commercial and industrial property. And most of you would be familiar with at least part of the Boston Army Base because it became the design site. So, big projects, and Tom was thrust right into the middle of that. I had the good fortune at that time to be EDIC's outside counsel, and so I worked closely with Tom. I frequently found myself in a room with half a dozen or more people talking about the latest big problem, or sometimes the latest big opportunity. And EDIC was a very democratic organization, so everyone was given a chance to speak, even the very young, and frequently more than once. It was also very democratic because I was invariably the only Republican in the room. Anyway, I began to notice that Tom's point of view was frequently adopted by others around the table, even including those he worked for. And people would frequently refer to Tom's comments and adopt them wholesale. Sometimes a person new to the group would point at Tom and say, "Yeah, what the kid in the glasses said. That's what I think." So it all brings to mind, my mind anyway, a scene from a movie. I think it was When Harry Met Sally. And Harry and Sally are in a diner or a restaurant. They're having a very private argument about, shall we say, intimate matters, which leads Sally, who was played by Meg Ryan, as I recall, to put on a very public demonstration to prove her point.
How is this going to?
Not there. But in the stunned silence that followed, a woman sitting at a table on the other side of the restaurant turned to her waitress and said, "I'll have what she's having." Well, that's just what it was like being in a meeting with Tom. We're always saying, "We'll have what he's having." such a young guy without much experience, frankly, or at least when he got there, he left with a lot of experience. How do you get such an important job? Because you can be sure there were a number of other guys walking around City Hall, and I say guys because there were very few gals in those days. But there were other guys walking around City Hall with a law school diploma, and they voted for Kevin White many times, frequently in the same election. But the answer, how did Tom get that job, had as much to do with Kevin White as it did to do with Tom Howard. Because Kevin White had a great talent for attracting smart, ambitious, talented, hardworking people into his administration. And he had an equal talent for identifying those people and putting them into challenging and responsible jobs. Many of them went on to great success in many fields, and some of them you would recognize because they continued it in more or less public roles or public life. So let me give you a little sampling of the people that Tom Howard was working with and competing against in Kevin White's City Hall. Peter Mead, White's deputy mayor, became the driving force behind the enormous success of Blue Shield, Massachusetts. He's now Tom Menino's director of the Boston Redevelopment Authority. Paul Grogan, who's done quite well, we can say, although he had the benefit of being Tom's roommate in college, so that probably explains much of it. Paul was the vice president of government and community affairs at Harvard and has for some time been president of the Boston Foundation, probably Boston's oldest and biggest independent charitable foundation. Micho Springer, one of Kevin White's deputy mayors, who served with distinction in so many capacities and so many organizations. Bill Bratton, who ended up running the police departments in Boston, New York, Los Angeles. Bob Cogley, who ran transit systems in Boston, New York, and London. Fred Salvucci, now on the faculty at MIT, became the Secretary of Transportation and Construction, but whose real gift to Massachusetts was the Big Dig. You can say what you want about the Big Dig, because it's had its problems. The Big Dig has been the absolute salvation of the city of Boston, and so most of Massachusetts. And finally, and most famously, Barney Frank, about which you don't need to hear any more from me. So, a pretty impressive list of friends, colleagues, and competitors. And finally, in closing, that always brings a smile. If you want your audience to smile, say, in closing. I would like to comment briefly on one more quality that Tom shares with people like Tom Brady, Kevin Garnett, and Bobby Orr. No, this is not about being tall or being a really good skater. It's about making the people around you better. As wonderful as those three men are as individual athletes, their success has had as much to do with the fact that they make the people around them better at what they do. And that describes Tom Howard perfectly. One more reason to be a citizen of the year.
I'm sure those meetings in Boston were long. I talked Next is Bob O'Connor, former chair of the school committee.
In closing, not sure, sir. So I wanted to be here tonight to talk to Tom about Tom. I thought this would be more of a roast, so I got a different memo than some people, but at least Jennifer and Roger and I got the same memo. So I was thinking about when I met Tom. It was about 9 or 10 years ago. It was at Peter Haley's house, and he was throwing one of those classic Meet the Candidates events, and I was running the school committee for the first time, and Tom was running for selectman for the first time. And everybody was telling me, you gotta meet this guy, Tom Howell. You guys are gonna get along so well. So Tom introduced himself, then he went on to his education. He said, all of my older brothers went to Georgetown, but I wanted to go to a better school, a much better school, so I went to Williams. And then he got around to me and said, so Bob, where did you go to school? To which I replied, Georgetown. I'm happy to say it was all uphill from there with regard to our relationship. We worked very closely together, us on the school side, Tom on the town side, to bring the boards together and had a lot of success. It was after the farm acquisition that Tom was basically lost. He was wandering aimlessly around town affairs, looking for the next big project. And so we went out for a few beers. Now that you're out of office, I can disclose that basically all of our business was done over a few beers. And I said to Tom, do I have a project for you? Because the school committee had just found out about this turf field and the public-private possible partnership that would deliver other fields on the site. So I said to Tom, you got to do this. And Tom agreed to run point on the field project. And as only he could do, brought the entire town together to get it done. And it was a few Thanksgivings after that, and we were on the field before the game. They brought all the elected officials down before the first football game on the field, and I'm looking all around, and I'm standing next to Tom, and Tom says, Bob, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? And I said, I'm looking for a place that they should put your name, because as far as I'm concerned, this is how we feel. So I think it's appropriate the Octets were here. I think it was also very appropriate that the McCall students were here. And I don't know if you hear it, Tom, but Sophie sang, don't forget me. And you never forgot the students of Winchester. And for that, we're very grateful. You might be up here in a few years singing a solo, Don't Forget Me, as well, because who knows. But and then over the course of the past 9 years, Tom and I got to know each other very well and are great friends. People were right, and we get along very well. Most of you know him only as a selectman, and he certainly has a lot more to him than that. I've had the pleasure of witnessing firsthand many of his diverse set of interests. As some people have said, he has a passion for music. The interesting thing is that his interests lie especially with artists and bands that no one else has ever heard of. His great business acumen has been demonstrated by the fact that his second job, of course his first job was always the board of selectmen. His second job was this moonlighting thing where he created over the past few years a company that has 25 restaurants and employs over 1,000 people, which is kind of impressive for a side job. He knows more about the Boston Red Sox than most baseball aficionados, including Bobby Valentine. And I've also witnessed that none of those are as impressive as his love for Nancy and her love for him. We go out in the house quite a bit, my wife Dawn in the back, and all right, little multimedia thing here. Better not work. And after every time we go out, it's actually kind of annoying. Dawn basically says, every time. Tom is the most interesting person we know. Does anybody else say that? That doesn't bother you? He is the most interesting person that we know. And it reminded me of the Dos Equis beer commercials. Are you familiar with those? The most interesting man in the world. Very similar to Tom. I'm a software guy. Good work. Volume.
Today, over 600,000 people live and work there. He is the only man to ever ace a Rorschach test. Every time he goes for a swim, dolphins appear. Hunters have asked him to probe them. You'd never get lost and he'd arrive at least 5 minutes early. His legend precedes him. When lightning precedes thunder. He is the most interesting man.
Don't forget about this person of the decade or anything else. He is the most interesting man in the world. Hold on. Got a weird guy there. It's not Tom. Well, I have my own music, but so I was going to try to prove to you that he's not only just the Winchester Citizen of the Year, that he's in fact the most interesting man in the world, or let's give him at least Winchester. So here's my attempt. Tom doesn't just go to Panera to eat like the rest of us. He owns 25 of their restaurants. And when he has their potato chips, he only eats one. Tom just has to go to concerts like most music lovers. Obscure bands come and play to him on the Winchester Common as he and Nancy watch from their front stairs that overlook their expansive front lawn. Tom is not the only person to lie about his age, but he is the only person who insists that he is 10 years older than he actually is. He has a law degree, but he doesn't practice law. In fact, Tom doesn't have to practice anything. Tom lives vicariously through himself. He doesn't play Farmville, which is that game on Facebook that millions of other people play. Tom convinces 22,000 people in a Boston suburb to buy their own farm. As we found out tonight for dinner, Tom likes chicken. What really is interesting is that chickens like Tom. So much so that they named one of their family members after him. So I hope you agree that not only is he Citizen of the Year and Person of the Decade, that in fact, Tom Howley is, I wish I had the thunder and lightning, the most interesting person in the world.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is the brother and partner of Tom, Lee Hunt.
wish my luggage had arrived as well. You know, there are times when you really do wish you had a bigger brother. Before long would have been just about right for me, I think. I made some notes coming up on the plane, and every one of them has been crossed off. But, so I will try to stick to a little personal and short. First of all, I'm very honored to be here. I know how much the city of Winchester means to my brother. I've heard for a long time him talk about the activities, the projects that have all been mentioned, how much enjoyment he gets out of them. And especially, I think, how much he enjoys working with all of you in this room. I mean, it's really been a highlight of his life, to be able to work with good people who are honest, authentic, and get good stuff done. And as I listen here tonight, I would strongly suggest that all of you get in a bus and go to Washington. They could use you for about a month. How to get stuff done, like the Winchester way. I told Tom before, he said, you got 2 minutes, Lee. Keep it short. And I said, well, I don't know if it's a toast or roast, because I didn't have much background in this. But I told Tom I would make it just a toast, just in this remote case that someday he might have to speak at some event where I would be. Which Tom said would be highly unlikely. You know, from a family perspective, we have covered a lot of our family, and I will not bore you a lot, but I will speak to Tom directly. We had a wonderful father, and I'm sure many of you had the same situation. We were blessed with a phenomenal father. For 40 years, was a civic light in Cleveland. And he was an example to all of us in our family. And many people, even to this day, have come up to me and said he was the finest person I've ever met. And when I sit here and listen tonight, Tom, I think Dad would be proud. You are his son in every way. Congratulations. You know, the one thing we didn't touch upon, or no one else did, it's only thing left on my list that I need to check off, is the business side. And we have a number of people from our business and some fellow Panera partners, our operators, franchisees here from Boston. You know, Tom brings the same communication and skill level and critical thinking to our business as he does, I think, as he does to Winchester and his activities here. You know, he has the unique and unfortunate task of being elected to be president of the Bread Council of all of the Panera franchisees in the country, about 50. And there aren't any shrinking violets among that group. You know, a bunch of successful business people who have put in their own money and made a success out of their Panera operations. And they have to deal with Panera corporate. There's always this tension, if you will, between a franchisee and a franchisor. But Tom's peers in the Panera group, the whole Panera family across the country, have elected him to be president of the group that represents him. And I think it speaks greatly to his ability to deal with disparate groups of people and work out issues that seemingly are unworkable to many other people. So Tom, I congratulate you again on your communication and your business acumen that you brought to our business. You know, Tom is sort of our cultural leader too in business. I mean, he is the one person that probably leads setting the example, who we are, what we stand for, what kind of employees we want to hire. We have 26 cafes as of this week. We opened up one in downtown Hartford with great success this week, we're glad. But Tom has led the effort, along with others here tonight, to give back to the communities, just like he gives back here. We gave our little company, over the last decade, we contributed $7 million to the communities that we serve in our cafe market. In our business, we call that a lot of dough. I do have one difficulty with one check that you write, though. And Tom tells me it's for the employee recognition program. And it's a check to the Boston Red Sox for season tickets. Now in Cleveland, $20,000 check will buy you a starting pitcher for 2 years. True. In closing, I wish to say that as good as Tom is as a selectman and as a planning board member, as a civic activist, as a husband, as a father, I have been blessed to say that he is equally good as a business partner and brother. And I have truly been blessed that, to be able to work with Tom on a business venture. It's something everybody should have an opportunity to do with their brother, and I feel very fortunate. So I'm here to say thank you, Winchester. Thank you, Nancy and Pat and Brett, for sharing time with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. The next,
I'm really tired.
has he been drinking? Ladies and gentlemen, we have two more speakers. The next one is a friend of Tom's from Boston, and his name is Paul Grogan, and he heads the Boston Foundation. It's Mr. Grogan's. Yes, sir.
Well, you know, I'm a city guy. I don't get out here much. You folks are crazy. Over the top. You never seen anything like it. But I'm glad to be part of it. I'm glad to be part of it. And I have some bona fides in that next to Tom's brother Lee, who we just heard from, I've probably known Tom the longest. We met in a Williams College freshman dormitory in the fall of 1968. And I really didn't care much for Tom at that time. But he had a fabulous stereo. KLH, really premier, and we both loved rock and roll, and we've been going steady ever since. But I don't know about some of you, as I, listen to speaker after speaker come up here, and we all look terrible compared to Tom. And I'm kind of boiling with resentment about that. I have for many years. We all go to Fenway Park, and they passed a law that mandates that if you order a beer, you get carded. No matter if you're, the old man in the hills, you get carded. But they've been carding Tom for real until just very recently. As has been mentioned, Tom and I, in addition to having our Williams College relationship, kind of grew up together in Boston politics. And it was a cause of great mourning on my part and on the part of many, I have to say, when Tom and Nancy made the decision to leave Boston and to come to your wonderful community. It was definitely Boston's loss, and it has been our loss in more ways than you can imagine. And in some ways, I think he brought that great experience from Boston here. But in other ways, he clearly didn't. For instance, I note on the program a quote from Patrick Fortin who says, "Tom exemplifies the qualities for this prestigious award. He has created an open, transparent, and logic-based environment for town-wide decision-making." Clearly, you forgot some things you learned in Boston. That's how you did it. That's not what you learned from Kevin White. But we had a great time in Boston. I don't think the story's been told. I came in a little bit late, so I hope no one told the story about how Tom actually got an opportunity to be in this part of the world. When we were in college together, we all knew Tom had extraordinary political gifts. And he was very interested in politics, and he wanted to work in politics after graduating. And he had this idea that he wanted to come and work for Kevin White. You know, how do you do that? How do you get in? Steve Anderson said it was an unbelievable constellation of stars in those days, very, very intimidating. But Tom's from Cleveland, and I know that this story might blight Tom in your view a little bit. So I'm taking a chance here because he really owes it all to George Steinbrenner. The late, I would say, hated in New England owner of the New York Yankees. George Steinbrenner was from Cleveland, and George Steinbrenner and Kevin White were classmates at Williams College, class of 1952. And when Tom came calling, or wanted to come calling on Kevin White in 1972, Kevin White still harbored at that point national ambition. And George Steinbrenner was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, fundraising committee with the Democrat in those days, as well as being a classmate and friend. So Tom's father was in a position to make a call to George Steinbrenner, and lo and behold, he got the interview with Kevin White, and of course he dazzled Kevin White. Although at the very end of the interview, Kevin said, you're very impressive, I think you'll do fine. I just have never hired anybody who looks like they're 12 years old. Well, those of us who mourned Tom and Nancy's departure for Boston, we really haven't given up. There's a great Back to the City movement. Are you aware of that? Is that registered at all? It's really happening. All you folks who were in the suburbs with those great school systems, and you got that big house, and boy, the city beckons. And I'm hoping, and I'm conducting a lonely vigil at the Charlestown Court to see if we can entice Tom and Nancy back, because in whatever they do and whatever he does, we will see those qualities again, those rare qualities, rare in and of themselves, and even rarer in combination, of intellect, seeing the big picture, relentless curiosity, a deft connection to people from all walks of life, and all leaving by the best sense of humor I think any of us have ever known. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, the last speaker tonight is somebody who everybody here that lives in Winchester knows. It's a guy named Peter Haley. And he has some friends. Peter Haley has served on the Winchester School Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and for years in the town meeting. And we just finished our town meeting on Monday night, and he was the last speaker in the town meeting before we adjourned. And tonight, he's the last speaker here. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Haley.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate coming up an hour 14. I'm sitting there like everyone else, and especially Tom, thinking, when can I go home? And I'm trying to think to myself, what would Tom do in this situation? And being somebody who is humble and devoid of ego, I'm thinking Tom would probably just come up, say something quickly, nice, forget about his long, arduously prepared remarks, and then sit down. But as those of you who do know me from my presence in town know, although Tom may be devoid of ego and full of humility, I am not. There's our guy. One second. I'm almost as bad as O'Connor, but not quite. So, just so you can get your head out of the door tonight, I saw Anderson doing that survey about how attractive you were, and he is right. 9 of those women at the Jenks Center all agree with you. You're there. I also just think that it's only fair to give you a sense of what Roger referred to as being a former selectman. And as others have noted, that unlike most adult 60-something-year-old males, your cultural connections are closer to 19-year-old skateboarders. So let me express it to you in the words of Mark Knopfler. After you leave the office, it's sort of like this. You promised me everything, you promised me thick and thin, and now you just say, oh yeah, Romeo, I should have seen with him. So for those of you who are not from Winchester, especially Tom's family, who are visiting this evening, I just want to give you some sense, because it is important to you to understand the significance of those who join us this evening. If you're Tom Howley being honored as the Citizen of the Year, and you sit there looking at those names of the men and women who have come before you, and you see those names, Saltmarsh, Parkhurst, Sullivan, there's only one thing you have to be thinking to yourself. Am I really that old? So, this year is the 100th anniversary of Francis Ouimet's victory in the U.S. Open at the Country Club. And tonight there's a Ouimet Fund dinner benefiting local caddies. And because it's the 100th anniversary, Arnold Palmer will speak. So a few weeks ago, when I received this invitation for the event, and I called my table mates at the Ouimet dinner, I was asked this question. Who is the guy who is more compelling than Arnold Palmer? And that was an easy question to answer, as I explained to my friend a little bit about what makes Tom Howley so special to all of us. And by the way, O'Connor told me this was a roast and we really should bring pictures. So, didn't get the wire transfer. I think you know what comes at the end. So I tried to explain to my friend a little bit about what makes Tom Howley so special to all of us. A Midwest boy from Vermilion, Ohio, with all the honesty, directness, and lack of pretense that implies, moves to Winchester and raises his incredibly wonderful family here, lives right in the middle of town in a quaint little building, bops around town in that little car, runs Panera Bread franchises, works together with his brother even, and has devoted 15 years to serving his town. Gets along with the local political aristocracy, works with friends and neighbors to build ball fields for school children, supports equity, addresses oppression, embraces differences, and builds community, preserves our local environment. To which my buddy says to me, "And he's a politician?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sounds like Mr. Smith goes to Washington." And I thought to myself, well, that's an excellent analogy for Tom. But then, right before he hung up, he said to me something, and Jennifer Wilson mentioned this earlier, he said something that has haunted me since then. He said, "Sounds too good to be true." So I thought, wow, I'm going to speak at this event at the Chamber of Commerce. I've never been to the Chamber before. I know from our, quote, conversations, close quote, about changing tax rates, what a stickler the Chamber is for factual detail. And I thought to myself, I really owe it to them to do a little research. I can't just get up there, churlishly toss around random thoughts in a confusing manner. It's not the town meeting. I really should investigate. So I traveled to Vermilion, Ohio. And when I got there, I found out this. First of all, and who knew, there's a body of water in Ohio, and there's a boat building industry there. But as I did more and more research, I soon found out some surprising facts about Tom. Tom did grow up on a community with a waterfront, but it wasn't in Ohio. You may recognize the Principality of Monaco. And also, that condominium at 31 Church Street, turns out that's not the only home Tom and Nancy live in. And as it turns out, the Mini Cooper, well, also, Tom's weekends, ours are on the Mystic Lakes, Tom's a little bit different. The Mini Cooper, and I hate to break this to you, Forrest, but you're not the only selectman, it turns out, driving a supercar. And also, Tom's local friends, well, we know that he's friendly with Jimmy Johnson and Forrest Montana and others, and he helps everyone in the community, but it turns out Tom has other friends as well. Some of you may recognize. Johnson and Fontana, not his only political buddies. Nope, there's other people. So I started to think to myself, who really is this guy? Is he really Mr. Smith, or is he somebody else? So I was thinking about that, and I was really starting to get nervous. I didn't have to be the one to come up here and say something like this, but then I went to March 25th. It's the dinner, it's the closing night at the selectmen table. It's just a great small town moment, and they bring up the chicken. And Howley accepts the honor in public. First of all, he's such an anti-politician because he picks up the chicken and he lets him take pictures of him with the chicken. I said, oh, Connor, well, there goes his political courage. But with his usual charm and self-deprecating wit, I thought to myself, how could this guy be anything but genuine? But soon after that, I received a word from somebody at the meeting, and Wade does look like he's asleep, but he really does listen. that all was not as it was appeared in public that evening. And as most of you know, 90% of the real business that the selectmen conduct takes place in what they refer to, ironically, as executive session. And the other 10% of what they do takes place in what they refer to as, I'm just going to go back here and get one of Patty's cookies. I thought I should go to the tapes and check it out. As most of you know, when the late town manager Chad Marr passed away, the town discovered that for many years, Mr. Marr had been tape recording everything that went on in town hall, and then transmitting those recordings by wire to a building at 19 Church Street. That address may sound familiar to some of you with 19 Church Street, and many of you recognize it as a local coffee shop where on Saturday mornings certain citizens congregate to drink coffee, solve the problems of the world, and confirm that the $10 million in time deposits they've had there since 1953 is still there. After the town made this discovery, as usual, Wade Welch and Mark Toogood were charged with investigating and making a recommendation. But what many don't realize is that they found out that the only problem with the taping system was that there just wasn't enough of it. So today, the system looks something like this. And all that information keeps coming in. So the information is sent here. Many of you have been wondering about why, in the midst of all these other demands on our budget, we might need a technology override for $300,000. I think that addresses what's going on there. The collection of this information is overseen by a committee headed by this man. That committee collects the information, and the raw data is transcribed every afternoon by 700 former married old sisters in a subterranean room on Elmwood Avenue, which is reached by a tunnel from the Cooperative Bank. In the sub-basement of the Elmwood Avenue building, a nondescript apartment building, the town also maintains this facility. And it's there that the Finance Committee keeps what they refer to as the OPEB Reserve. And some of you have heard acronyms about OPEB. Let me assure you that it stands for Other Post-Election Benefits. And each day the sisters transcribe the conversations that take place, and they store them in these volumes. So when I really wanted to see if what I had heard about Tom, what he was really like behind the scenes, was true, I went and obtained one of those transcripts. Thanks, sir. What's it? And I have a transcript, and I think that you'll recognize the voices and what happened from the words that are spoken This transcript was recorded on the morning of March 26th at 1:45 a.m. in the men's room at Lucia's restaurant on Mount Vernon Street, after Tom had been given the chicken. And the first remarks I'll read you, I won't go through everything, but the first ones are Mr. Howley. Joseph forward pass Christopher, Jimmy. And I should explain to you that while the sisters are diligent workers, there are certain words that they avoid the direct expression of. They have a sort of funny locution about certain words. So Mr. Howley goes on. Forward pass chicken, a forward pass chicken. Mr. Johnson, I know, Tom, I know. Let's just vote, go into executive session, we'll go back to town hall and work it out. Howley, fine. Where the Woburn is Jennifer? Mr. Marmon, I don't know. She said something about not wanting to meet in the men's room. Mr. Johnson, well, she can't expect us to meet in the ladies' room. I spoke to the moderator. He said this is done all the time in his day. Thereafter, the group votes to go into executive session, resolves to do so, and goes back to town hall to conduct the executive session. There's some preparatory discussion about what the purpose of the meeting is, and then Tom speaks, and he says this on the tape. So let's just think a little about what we're really doing here. I mean, this is not about me, right? This is about what kind of community we really want to be. Are we going to be a community of integrity or not? Will we be authentic? When we name things after people, why do we do that? To honor them, to display to others what we think of them. And also, right, we want to say thank you to them for all they've done. But when you think about it, does Harry Cheplow get to enjoy that park? Does Ed O'Connell get to enjoy the memorial? Does Randy get to enjoy the water treatment? Well, never mind that. Well, anyway, can we agree? Let's just focus on this first. Can we agree it's better to express gratitude to people when they're all with us? They all agree. So Tom goes on. So if we're going to honor me, would we do it by choosing a chicken? I mean, funny, right? But not really what we were about. Do we think town service is funny? That it should be an object of ridicule? Is that an authentic example of what we are? No. So hypothetically, if we were to be a community of integrity and name something after me, it would have to be something we all admired, right? I mean, of course, assuming that we did admire me, but speak up differently if you think. Mr. Johnson, what do you think about Tom? What do you think about naming after you? Mr. Howley, well, something obviously we could look at and would see. Nancy and I could look out at it. It would reflect how much we love the town and the town loves us. And you know how much Nancy and I, when we look out the window in the morning, love the common. And then, after this discussion starts, there's a phone call. The phone is ringing, and you can hear Ms. Mon goes to answer the phone. You can hear her mumbling something, saying, yes, John. No, I will, John. Yes, right away. Well, then, all of a sudden, Ms. Mon appears in the meeting, Mr. Howley, not now, Patty. And then there's some discussion about the fact that apparently there's been an earlier resolution dealing with the naming of the common. It took place on June 2nd, 1983, and said that the common would be named on behalf of a certain town official, and that it would be named on the earlier of that date on which John Sullivan attained the age of, that's whited out, it says 125 years, or B, that date on which John Sullivan shall no longer serve as town moderator, whichever shall come first. And Howley at this point goes ballistic. There's a lot of forward passes, but as it soon comes out, he says, just tell me who it's named after. And he finds out that the town common's been named. So, but Tom, as you all said tonight, Tom doesn't stop. He persists, he goes on, and he persisted that evening. And he said, well, I guess we all know what we have to do, right? After the common, there's only, and they all sort of shake in irritation, and they're worried about this, what are people going to say? And Tom goes on, and in his same manner, his authentic manner, he speaks to them, and eventually, as everyone have noted, they agree with him. But then the phone rings again. Because it turns out, when Miss Long comes back, that what had happened at the town common has also already happened to the town hall. Some of you may think that was the end of the story, and that Tom had been outsmarted by Whip and John, but Tom is ingenious. He sticks to his guns, he patiently explains, and he arrives at a solution. And when you drive back into Winchester tonight, I want you to look carefully at the side of the road and there you will see the solution that Tom arrived upon. On Tom's last night as a selectman, I recited a drunken Irish poem, and O'Connor, of course, is urging me to do that again, but it's late enough already. That's not happening. And but I would like to make reference to a real Irish poet. William Butler Yeats was a poet and a politician and a statesman in Ireland. And towards the end of his career, he authored a poem called The Municipal Gallery Revisited. And in that poem, he goes back to this gallery, and in the gallery are all these paintings of the people that he had served with. Much like the men and women here tonight, he's looking around the walls and he sees all of these men and women that he served with, and he goes on in verse to describe each of them. I can tell you what I want. And so, at the end of the poem, though, Yeats says this. And he says, "Think where man's glory most begins and ends, and say that my glory was, I had such friends." My glory is to have a friend like Tom Howley, and I'm so happy you all could be here tonight to recognize him.
Thank you, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the Howley Chamber of Commerce, Pat Ford.
Thanks, Peter. Now I get hour 17. Appreciate that. John called me today, and he always has it so organized that he put me through a little grill on what was going to happen, what I had to do. We had a little joke about what happens if you come back every year. Because obviously we have John back every year, and this is actually my second go-around as president. So we kind of had a laugh and joke about, is it because you just weren't at the meeting or because you're good at what you want to do or what you're doing? But I did want to take a second, John. We don't recognize you enough. He does this every year. I think he's done it for 30 years for us, and we were just so grateful. So I'm a little scared to come up here, especially after I know Tom's, very committed to green and all this sort of stuff. I have 4 kids. My lights are on, my AC's cranked, and the windows are open. I drive an SUV. I'm probably the wrong guy to be up here to help you out. So I try hard, but it's a challenge. So, but we know what a gifted guy you are, and it's hard to really add or expand much on what he's done. We all know what he is. I think what I figured out tonight fast, when your brother's your business partner, and your business is a part-time job, and you can get by him and do all this stuff, then you're a pretty gifted guy. So your brother's a special guy. It's nice he lets you get away with what you get away with, and obviously you can manage a lot of stuff. So thanks, Lee, and we appreciate all you do. We usually give a picture or a plaque or something to recognize the Citizen of the Year. You probably have like 1,000 of those, so we sort of struggle what to do. And what the Chamber decided to do just to honor Tom is we're going to make a gift in his name, and we went with the longest speech, and the Multicultural Network won. So we're going to make a contribution to the Multicultural Network. Thank you. Just joking. We know it's a special thing to Tom, and sorry, I couldn't resist, but we felt like that's a great place to recognize you, and you've obviously done a lot for them, so we'll be making a contribution from the Chamber, so thank you. So, being what time it is and everything else, I know I was in a meeting today with Ellen Babcock, and she said, can you drag this out? I don't want to give up my title as late as I can. I think you've gone as long as you can go, Ellen. It's time to call it a day. So, I'm lucky enough to have the honor to introduce the 34th Citizen of the Year, Tom Howley. Thank you, Tom.
Citizen of the Year thing is really something. Really, I recommend it. Anybody wants to do it, you should do it. I'm very honored by the Chamber's picking me in this way, and I'm very honored by all of you, truly. You know, I had some trepidation about this, but I got here tonight, and I just looked around, and it's like, these are all my friends, you know? And it's a wonderful thing. It's been a wonderful thing for me to be able to meet all of you and to work with all of you. And I want to say that, you know, as I was thinking about this, I don't know when they announced this, maybe a month ago, and I went into Fell's Hardware, and I said to Kevin, what is this like? And then just this past Monday at town meeting, I ran into Helen, and I had the same conversation. They both said the same thing. They said, you know what? It's great. It's like going to your own wake without the dying part. And they were mostly right, although I have to say there were a few times tonight I was dying. But anyway, I would like to, and I know it's late, so I hope you'll just stay with me. It's going to maybe like 10 minutes. That's all the moderator will ever give me. He will never give me more. But there are a number of people that I want to acknowledge tonight. And I have a few pictures that I'd like to share with you, if I could. Oh, it's already up there, too early. But first I wanted to talk about the chicken, all right? So for those of you who may have missed it, you've heard about it. My last board meeting, many of the people that I had the great fortune to work with over the years came to send me off, and among them were my former friends at Right Rock Farm. And I was curious, and they brought me this chicken, and I thought about it afterwards because it was a very memorable thing. And I was able to determine that this was the first farm animal that ever attended a selectmen's meeting. That goes back a long time, right? What I was unable to verify was whether this was the first time that anyone has relieved themselves on the selectmen's table. You know, we actually had several very well documented cases of people relieving themselves under the table. But we're really not sure about, I'm actually on the table. And I got, the chicken, I got a lot of comments on the chicken. I got more comments on the chicken than anything I've ever done. And one of my favorites is a very dear friend of mine from college who just sent me an email, and he said he saw the picture and he says, it doesn't go with your tie. And as Nancy knows, I have a lot of trouble accessorizing, so I think that was right. So there's been a lot of false information given out tonight, and I'd like to correct just a little bit of it, and I'd like to honor some of the other people who have done so much for the town. First of all, as the program says, I know many of you know, my brother Lee, talking about others have, I grew up in a small town in Ohio. And growing up with my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters in this, rural community, small town values, simple sort of family-centered life that we had there. And it was really this Midwestern small town values that I soaked up that really became the lens through which I really saw a lot of things. And it was really the thing that guided me when I sort of took on a lot of issues for the selectmen. And I think the quickest way for me to give you an idea of my childhood is to show you a picture of the house I grew up in, which is actually already there. It was simple and it was plain, but what the heck did we know as kids? We loved it. We loved living there. I actually thought it was funnier than that, but I'm going to keep going anyway. So, anyway, my brother Lee and Joanne actually still live there. Really remarkable. So there are, in fact, as we've been noting tonight, the real purpose of the Citizen of the Year Award is not simply to honor an individual. It really is to honor some approximation of the values that as a community we really think are important. And there are many, many Winchester citizens and business owners, municipal and school employees, many of whom are in fact in this room tonight, who represent those values of generous and able community service. It's really an extraordinary thing. It is a remarkable town. I don't know if other towns are like this, but it's a remarkable town, I think, to live in that way. And I'd like to acknowledge just a few of the many people I had the unbelievable good fortune to work with and get to know and became my friends. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge John Sullivan. John is, as you know, grew up in Winchester, he became a town meeting member, a selectman, he was a recipient of the same award, has served many years with great distinction as moderator. In fact, I'm in awe of how long and how well John has served the town. My 14 years serving the town on the planning board, the board of selectmen, Sarah Spire, I don't know if Sarah's here, I just want to shout out some people's names, 16 years of incredible service for our children on the school committee. Jimmy Johnson, in what will become 15 years on the board of selectmen. Where's Jimmy? Jimmy. But even with all their incredible service and the years I spent, nothing is compared to what John has done and continues to do. And in preparing for this, I did some research for this evening. Ellen Knight, who many of you probably know, was kind enough to let me into the town archives, and I found a photo that was taken of John, actually taken during his first term on the board of selectmen. And I thought you'd like to see it, if I can make this happen here. There he is. Yeah. It was actually mid-19th century. Winchester, I think, had just separated from Woburn as far as I can tell. And who knew John dressed so well, really? Another person I want to mention who served the town with skill and distinction for a very, very long time, someone I've come to have a great deal of appreciation and respect for, is Wade Welsh. And most of you know Wade through his able work as our town council. What you may not know is that Wade also has acted as the selectman's point person on a number of really critical capital projects. And Wade doesn't just serve as a lawyer on these projects. I mean, Wade really gets in. He has a very, very hands-on approach. Doesn't matter, decision-making on the project, engineering, project administration, incredibly hands-on. And just to give you an idea about Wade's approach, many of you know we are having serious structural problems with the dam in the center of town. And, Wade, as always, did not want to leave it to anyone else to try to understand exactly how serious this problem was. He wanted to know firsthand. And I have a picture of him here, which is, I think it'll give you an idea of exactly the kind of person Wade is. It's amazing. I mean, he would not leave it to anybody else. It was hair-raising. We had quite a snow melt, I know you guys know, and it was, fortunately, it all worked out. But at any rate, if Wade was here, I'd ask him to stand up. I don't know if he is, but he's done a lot for the town. And the town manager's office. Speaking of incredibly dedicated and talented municipal employees, how about the women in the town manager's office? As our new town manager, Richard Howard, is, and it's one of the things I'm most proud about, was that I happened to be on the board when in fact we were able to hire Richard. And our assistant town manager, who is incredibly talented, has served the town for years, Mark Toogood. Nothing would happen in the town manager's office, and Richard and Mark would be the first to admit this, without these incredibly able and thoughtful women. What I didn't know when I got on the board was that in addition to all the other work they do for the manager, town manager, and the board, they are people that so many of our citizens call. When they have a problem, they call the town manager's office, and the number of calls they field each day is absolutely staggering. They manage to get somehow all that done and still everything else we ask them to do. And fortunately, the board has invested heavily in the kind of technology they need to do their job. And I have this picture. There they are. Patty and Cheryl and Pat, and then I think Jen in the back. And Patty Vaughn, I think, is here. Where is Patty? Patty. And anyway, another person I want to give a shout out to is Jay Gill, our DPW director. Jay, I don't know if Jay's here either. All these people obviously had the good judgment to stay away, or they left about an hour ago. But at any rate, we all know that what a great job Jay and his team does. And they just do an outstanding job, really under any circumstance. Year after year, their budget has been reduced. Year after year, in spite of all that, they get the job done. And this last winter was, in fact, particularly difficult with all the snowstorms we had. And I know all of us remember the February snowstorm, which was incredibly difficult. And Jay and his team, literally, they worked around the clock under very tough, near Arctic conditions, really. until the job was done. And I have a picture here of Jay and his team. I believe that is taken on Myrtle Street. I'm not really sure. But they do a wonderful job for all of us. And mention a couple projects. Winchester Field, it is one of the more satisfying things I was able to do as a selectman, together with Jim Johnson and the board. It truly was a team effort in trying to restore Winchester Field. And, you know, the replacement of the bleachers, which had been condemned, and our football team hadn't been able to play at home for, I think, like 4 years or something like that. And the installation of the multi-sport turf field, the soon-to-be completed installation of the track, which is going to happen in the next few weeks. That will bring our track team back to Winchester. I don't think they've had a track meet at home in 15 years. So it was really an extraordinary thing, and the people that made that possible, great example of citizen engagement, was Paul Manganero and the Field Development Council and our very own Whip Saltmarsh. And, you know, they, together with many, many citizens of Winchester who supported their vision, made that all happen. And I will never forget, if you just allow me, the controversy over the plan, the skepticism about whether the money would be raised, the work that Mark did, Meg White, Wade J, DPW, the cooperation of the citizens around who lived in the neighborhood around there. And the project was completed in time for the Woburn Winchester football game. And many of you were probably there. The bleachers were jammed, the entire field was surrounded by people, the Winchester High School marching band, cheerleaders, the football team running onto the field. It was an extraordinary thing. And I had the good fortune to be able to stand on the field for the dedication. And as all this is going on, I look up into the field, up into the bleachers, and I see Paul Manganero. And just the look on his face, he was just so proud and happy, you know, with all that had been accomplished. I was able, thank God for cell phones, I was able to get a picture of Paul. You know, and he deserved that moment. The farm, okay, I'll try to get through this as fast as I can. So the farm, another thing I'm really proud of is to be a part of the town's decision to buy Right Black Farm. And to protect what is really a magnificently beautiful 350-year-old farm. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. Especially the many, many community conversations that I got to participate in that were almost as long as tonight. And so we could help each other think through what was really a complicated and difficult decision. And you know, the Board of Selectmen is still wrestling with the farm in some way in terms of should anything be developed up there, or if so, how much. And even though that decision is in front of us, I do think it's important that all of us acknowledge the remarkable things which the Conservancy has done in a very, very short time. They're not only restoring the historic farm buildings, they've turned Right Lock Farm back into a full working farm. In just a few short years, the Conservancy has introduced farm animals. I happen to have one myself now. And they've diversified and vastly expanded the crop production on the farm. You know, it's not just raspberries anymore. So if you haven't had a chance to see what they've been up to, I really recommend that you go up there and visit your farm. But I do have a couple pictures that'll give you an idea. So check this out. There are now buffalo. There are buffalo grazing on the farm. If you haven't seen them, it's really a remarkable sight. And the work they've done getting beyond the raspberry patch to really, really produce some crops up there, it's extraordinary. It's extraordinary what they've done. And it's really only, I don't know, Chuck, it's only been like 3 or 4 years ago. Anyway, so Archie McIntyre, Jim Whitehead, Sally Quinn, all the people on the Conservancy who have done such a great job. I think we all owe them a great deal. And Carol and Sarah was up here before, and Susan McPhee, they talked about another really important thing to me, which is the environment. And many of you know that, one of the things I really wanted to do as a selectman was, in fact, to help the town increase its energy efficiency, to save money and do our part to reduce carbon emissions. And through the great work of the Energy Management Committee, the town's energy consultant, Susan McPhee, we have avoided over $4 million in energy costs in the last 8 years. I mean, it's really been an extraordinary thing that we've done. Great work by Sustainable Winchester on behalf of homeowners and businesses. And the board also established the climate action plan, which we heard about. And through their work, the board was able to approve Winchester's own climate action plan. And you know, even though the climate action plan is written and approved, the Action Plan Committee actually remains very, very active in monitoring changes in climate conditions in Winchester, including winter temperatures and ice on many of our ponds. You may have seen them out there. And in fact, this is a photo that they shared to me. It was taken at Winter Pond. Which is, I mean, I asked you, if you think that the climate isn't changing, when is the last time you saw a polar bear in open ice on Winter Pond? It's really something. My last picture, I promise, is the selectmen's meetings. One of my goals, truly, this is true, as a selectman was to be sure that we did everything we could to provide a forum where people could respectfully engage each other, where we would authentically listen, I do like that word, where if we did that together, we could do our best critical thinking and come up with the best ideas and solutions for the town. And I really believe that we, in fact, not always, but we achieved quite a bit. And then many, many things became possible as a result of that. And this is not as easy as it may sound. It's, you know, particularly difficult, I think, to achieve the right balance of formality that the Office of Selectmen has, and then really try to, in fact, make people comfortable and have it be more informal. But I think we did that. I think we did strike the right balance between formality. And I have a picture of one of my last meetings, I think we were able to do it. And that actually was taken the night where we debated for several hours about whether to grant the permit for the Inca Fair and the parade, which we did. And it's actually this weekend, so I hope you're able to do that. But I'm now going to close. It'll only take me another couple minutes. But anyway, I want to thank the Chamber again for this award, and to all of you for taking the time. I know you had no idea how much time you were giving me. But it is a great honor for me to be included among the former recipients. You know, citizen volunteers, it really is a term that I love. It's an ideal that I love, citizen volunteers. And there are so many of us here tonight. There's so many people who, in fact, are that in our community. I'm not really sure, as I was saying, whether it's true in other towns, but we know that this value of community engagement, of creating a caring and connected community, that we have strived to all do together to make our community work for everyone, is deeply rooted for many generations in Winchester, and it's really expressed by so many different people in our community in so many different ways. And however embarrassing this is for me tonight, it is really good that we acknowledge, that we all acknowledge each other and that about our community. And people would sometimes say to me, they'd say, oh, being a selectman, that must be really a thankless job. And for me, and I know for many of you, being engaged in a truly conscious way in our community and the life of our community is really anything but thankless. It is, you know, really good to be successful. We have many, many wonderful, successful people in Winchester. But to be fulfilled, you know, that's really something, you know. And I have been very, very lucky that for me, family, my work, and the community, they've all managed somehow to strengthen each other, and I am very, very grateful for that. And so I'm just going to mention a couple more people. My brother Lee, who you heard from, whose suit I took and hid so that he wouldn't have to speak tonight. He thought it was the airline. I'm really so glad that he's here. He has really, truly been a great brother for me, for my other brother Dan and my sister Kate. He has made a lot of things possible. And all four of us have really navigated, you know, we've had our successes, we've had difficulties and challenges in our life, but as our parents really would have so hoped, our closeness and love for each other is strong. And Lee's intention and commitment to that has everything to do with that. So I greatly appreciate the fact that I had Lee for my brother. And my niece and goddaughter, Sarah, who had no idea she was speaking tonight and nailed it, I think. Really, she did a great job. She's a very special person to me. And she has been ever since she was a little girl. And our restaurant company, who I am so lucky to work with, all the caring, talented people. We did open our 26th restaurant just on Monday. We had a grand opening this morning in Hartford. The mayor of the city was there, the president of the city council. It was a wonderful event, and I am so blessed to be able to work with the people I work with. You know, my brother Lee is my partner, and so is my good friend Bajat Sharif. Bajat is here with his wife Zoila, and they have a wonderful family. And Bajat is a remarkable person, and he has a remarkable story, and I am glad that I am in this part of it. I truly am, Bajat. And my sister-in-law Jane, all her family is here, the Mackins. I miss my brother-in-law Terry. I'm going to mention Terry because I can do this. I only get this award once. But I'm so glad for Katie and John and Jay, and they've become my family when I'm not in Ohio, and it's been a wonderful thing that we all have each other that way. And my son and daughter, Patrick and Brett, I thought I meant so much to me, you guys getting up and speaking. It was really a wonderful thing for me to hear you. And, you know, they know how much Nancy and I love them. They know how much respect that we have for them and how much we admire them. And they are pursuing their possibilities now and still teaching me a great deal, which is a wonderful thing. And they're also willing to give me crap occasionally and humor me, which I also need. And they're really wonderful, wonderful kids. Very, very blessed. Not so much. I don't want to say. Anyway, I also want to mention Chris Maddox is here. Chris is we call him our ABC son. You know, it's a little like, wow, what do we say, right? But it was truly ABC that introduced us to Winchester. Truly ABC that did that. And the wonderful thing is we got to meet Chris when he was 13 years old. It's like 20 years later, right? And Chris is a very, very important member of our family. And so we're very, very blessed by that. Another gift to us through Winchester, I think. And our many wonderful friends. And last but not least, Nancy. You know, the program says, when I met Nancy, it was a game changer. That is like an understatement. It truly is. If any of you know Nancy, you know this to be true. I'm like incredibly lucky to be on this journey with Nancy. It's a remarkable thing. And my friends and family will tell you that. They tell you, I can't believe how lucky you are. And they tell me this all the time. And for the longest time, the only people I knew in Winchester was through Nancy. And so much love, you know, really of the unconditional kind, so much joy and encouragement, so much good cooking, so much welcoming, guidance, adventures, and warmth for me, our kids, our extended family. That's all from Nancy. I love you very much, Nancy. And thank you. She even loved me while I was working with me for these past years, and for giving me the chance to be a citizen volunteer. I greatly appreciate it.